Hello and welcome to Robin Minds. My name is Hero Daniels and we'll have a special show for you today. I hope you're having a beautiful afternoon. Well, it's a brand new week and we're hoping for amazing things to happen to us all this week. But first, let's take a look at some of the major headlines this past week. It is the news from the front page. First, we'd like to talk about the Supreme Court's verdict on the presidential elections. At Ahiro, the Supreme Court of Nigeria has upheld President Tinubu's election, and that is the apex court, so it is final. Now, all of the legal matters surrounding the presidential elections are over. And in the studio to discuss some of this news, I have a lawyer, Izuchukwu Oboko. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I also have another lawyer, Akbo
Ikogo. Nice to
Ikoho.
Nice
welcome. So I'm going to start with you.
Okay.
I'm going to start with you, Akbo.
Okay.
What does this mean for the nation? And what do you think the opposition parties should do at this point? Because this legal matter has lingered for a while. So what do you think the opposition have to do about the matter?
Okay, well, everybody knows Supreme Court's decision is final in this matter, so there can be no more court cases on this. Now we just have to come together, and the opposition has to also make sure that they continue as opposition parties to make sure, as a sort of check on the executive, to make sure the executive does the right thing, to make sure every policy they bring out, they look into it, criticize where necessary, but at the same time, we all have to just come together and try to move the nation forward.
What are your thoughts? Izuchukwu?
Well, my thoughts on the Supreme Court judgment and what the opposition needs to do. The Supreme Court is the apex court and, in a manner of speaking, the final court. Although some say there is the court of God. But how much help that will be in this instance, we don't know. But the opposition really can champion electoral reforms. Some of the things that they complained about in court should find a way of forming part of our electoral legislation, right? And they should continue to check the ruling party on their policies and criticize in a very constructive way. Somehow, positioning for the next election has already started. For those who are veteran politicians, if you are close to them, you know that leaning and political alignment has started ahead of 2027 elections. So yes, constructive criticisms, champion electoral reforms, and then ensure you put your house in order, because a lot of divisions within the parties really affected the chances of some party in the last election cycle.
Yeah, well, do you think we have a strong opposition? I used to think we did have a strong opposition in the previous governments, but it's seeming like we do not have an opposition anymore. What are your thoughts?
Well, I must preface this by saying that this is just my opinion. I believe the Labour Party and the youth in Nigeria right now are the real opposition, not the PDP. The youth and the Labour Party and some other people that are not really party affiliated, I don't know if it's all right to mention names here, have also been the ones putting the APC government in place. So yes, we have a viable opposition, but not the PDP, in my opinion.
Okay. And what role do you think the civil societies will have to play in ensuring that there's pressure on this current government to make certain electoral reforms?
Well, the civil society will always have to continue what they have been doing before. In fact, there have been cases where the civil society has taken the government to court to actually compel the government to do the right thing, to release information. I remember the Freedom of Information Act and everything was actually championed by civil society. So yes, they will need to continue all they've been doing before.
Speaking of electoral reforms, the former chairman of the Independent Electoral Commission, INEC, Atahiru Jega, has emphasized that the president should not have the authority to appoint the electoral boss, proposing new measures for credible election management in Nigeria. Now, Jega, who is renowned for overseeing one of Nigeria's elections, has called for the amendments in the Electoral Act of 2022 to mandate electronic posting of all election tallies. While acknowledging that the current electoral law is an improvement, he believes it can still be enhanced to eliminate ambiguities and strengthen provisions. What are your thoughts on this, on his view?
I couldn't agree more with Atahiru Jega, and Atahiru Jega has my respect, as conducting one of the most credible presidential elections in Nigeria. He's just re-echoing the thoughts of millions of other Nigerians. I mean, it was clear from the rhetorics from INEC in the last election cycle. If you followed Festus Okoye, some of the media interviews he granted, and even that of the chairman of INEC, Professor Mahmood, you would see that it was intended that the use of beavers was going to be compulsory. In fact, quoting Festus Okoye, he had said that INEC had no discretion in the matter, that as a matter of compulsion and law, INEC had to use the beavers. But it is no longer news how everything played out and how beavers was suspended. So yes, there should be electoral reforms, and those reforms, in my own opinion, should take the form of beavers being clearly spelled out to be mandatory for the use of elections. Secondly, the president should have no business appointing the chairman of INEC. Again, in the interest of fair play. So there is a president who may likely contest in 2027, but he has input in the composition of the management cadre of INEC. That, in a sense, does not show. Yes, we know at some point recourse may have to be made to the National Assembly when it comes to removal. But we know how these things go. So yes, you should have no input in it. Another one is to find a way to reduce the participation of the judiciary in our elections. They should really play limited role in deciding who won an election, because all the justices can account for themselves just for one vote for each justice, really. So if the elections are conducted in a way that they are largely seen as credible, fair, and transparent, right, I believe that a lot of litigations, electoral litigations, will not happen. Again, because of the strain that it does on other very sensitive commercial matters in our courts. Electoral matters are time-bound. What it means is that the justices who sit on the several election panels across the country will have to abandon the cases they are already dealing with. From a judiciary that is already understaffed, increased and humongous workload, we're now pulling them away for upwards of 180 to 240 days, and sensitive commercial matters are suffering. It's impacting on the economy, and it's a lot of strain on the human resource in the judiciary.
So if the judiciary is not the last place where election matters are being decided, which body should be responsible for deciding who won an election?
Awesome. So my point is not that the court should not participate at all. I mean, there will be pre-election disputes and there will be post-election disputes. I'm saying that the involvement of the court should be greatly reduced. If you know the volume of election litigations that goes to the court immediately after every election cycle, all the way from presidential election down to even councillorship elections, no legal system can survive. And why do we have this? By nature, Nigerians are a very litigious people. Every little thing you hear from my lawyer will go to court. You know, there are certain matters that should ordinarily be settled. Now, I'm not talking about that for election dispute. But I'm saying that there are ways that INEC can carry out elections. Participants won't feel so cheated that they want to litigate every single item. So what I'm saying, in essence, is reduced participation of the judiciary.
All right. Boss, Izuchukwu made a very valid point. It's like the president shouldn't have the power to actually, just reiterating what Professor Jega had said, that the president shouldn't have the power to appoint the next electoral boss. But how feasible is that? How feasible can the laws change?
Well, first of all, if I may just refer to a point that he made, which I agree with, I think the Electoral Act needs to be further amended to actually make it compulsory, the electronic transmission of results. If we had done that, we would not have had as many challenges to the presidential results as we have right now. And going back to the issue of the president appointing the chair of the Electoral Commission, I really don't see, in my opinion, I don't see anything wrong with that. As long as you have men of integrity there that are willing to do the work and are just uncompromisable, in a manner of speaking, there's nothing wrong with having the president appoint. Because after the president appoints the ministers, he appoints the heads of parastatals and all that. So I don't think there's a problem with the president appointing the chair of the Electoral Commission. All
right, Mr. Juku. Well, now that it is Tinubu's presidency has been validated, obviously all forms of litigations are over. However, there are certain prominent Nigerians that are still echoing the fact that another candidate won the elections, even though the Supreme Court has just settled the matter. And one of those prominent Nigerians is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the author. In a recent, I think, in a recent symposium that she was having, or she was invited to, she recognized Peter Obi, the presidential candidate for the Labour Party, and she did introduce him as the man that a lot of people publicly knew won the election. Now, for somebody like Chimamanda Adichie, you know, with such a huge following and with such huge international attention, is that patriotic for her to say? You know, what are your thoughts on that particular matter? I'm going to start with you, Abbas.
Okay, I'm going to start. I actually watched the event where she said that. She introduced Peter Obi as the man who, in her opinion, won the election. Well, effectively, the Supreme Court has put an end to the speculation. We have a president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and that is the end of it. Now, in addition to that, everybody is entitled to say anything, to have a freedom of expression, to have a freedom of opinion, actually. So she can say whatever she wants to say. She's entitled to that opinion. But the issue has been laid to rest by the Supreme Court.
Izuchukwu, do you think that is unpatriotic?
You know, 2023 general election came with a lot of emotional strain for so many people. True, some people still feel the hurt. Not just that a particular candidate won, but again, because of the process. There is a way and manner in which certain things will be done. Even if it doesn't go your way, you would see transparently where you have fallen short. It still brings us back to the process of the election. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie is a world-renowned and respected figure, right? She's brought tremendous goodwill to Nigeria and the Nigerian people. And we know that she publicly declared support for Peter Obi in the last election cycle. If her opinion is that Peter Obi won the election, the truth of the matter is that millions of Nigerians share that opinion. Because how do you explain that 3 elections held at about the same time, one device for the same election? For some reason, there was a glitch that affected one of the 3 elections that was transmitted through one single device. Until today, nobody has creditably explained how those glitches arose. In my view, it appears the glitches is very discriminatory. It has to be a discriminatory glitch. It didn't affect the Senate election. It didn't affect the House of Representative election. It decided to affect only the presidential election. Mind you, Festus Okoye, quoting him, he says that the software for the BVAS was locally manufactured by in-house INEC engineers. What that points to is that no matter the form of glitches, the person who wrote the software or the code or whatever it is can fix it. These were not foreign experts. And so there's a lot of suspicion that, and I also share that sentiment too, that the suspension of electronic transmission of the presidential election was for the advantage of a particular candidate. I do not think it's an unpatriotic thing to express an opinion. What you think, looking at the facts and circumstances surrounding a very critical national issue like the presidential election. I don't think it's unpatriotic.
All right, thank you very much, Izuchukwu. Very quickly, before we just move on to the next segment, we want to talk about one of the most trending news this past week, which is the car purchase by the Senate and the criticism that followed. The Senate, in response to that, stated that lawmakers required vehicles for their duties. The chairman of the Committee on Senate Services, the chairman of the Committee on Senate Services, Sunday Karimi, had argued that the members of other government branches use similar vehicles and called on critics to scrutinize ministers and members of state assemblies who also use such vehicles. Now, we all know that they all chose Toyota Land Cruiser, and the conversation was, why did they not patronize Nigerian-made brands or cars that have been assembled in Nigeria, like Innocent or Nord, etc.? And one of the reasons that they stated is also because of the bad state of the road. That is why they need to get vehicles like Toyota Land Cruisers. So is it not better to fix the bad roads that will benefit the entire populace as opposed to buying a Toyota Land Cruiser to help them navigate the bad roads that they are supposed to fix?
Okay, well, when the information came out about the purchase of these vehicles, that I think it was about 160 million each or thereabout, I think the government is not really reading the room, or they're actually reading the room and ignoring what the citizens really think about things. You cannot tell the Nigerian citizen to tighten his belt, and at the same time you are engaging in this sort of wanton and wasteful spending. In my opinion, I think it was actually disgraceful for somebody to have come out and a representative of government, in the manner of speaking, and he said that he needs Land Cruisers because the roads are bad. It makes more sense to fix the roads. Now, if you buy a Land Cruiser for, let's say, 160 million, we know what that can provide to the poor man on the street that cannot afford to eat. If you look at the statistics coming out of Nigeria, we are on the brink of precipice. It is a very terrible situation. So I think it's disgraceful, and I think it's irresponsible for the Senate or the National Assembly to go into such purchases at this time, and to now justify it based on their own failure to provide the required infrastructure makes it more disgraceful. That's my opinion.
Izuchukwu, finally.
Yes, I agree with you. There are local companies who do great work in the automobile industry. I know of Eliza Day Jacotoland Limited, and you can mention the rest of them. So yes, it's more prudent to fix the roads. But yes, as lawmakers, they also need to get all the resources they need to function in their office. But the question is, at what cost? Aren't there other vehicles with lower cost that will give the same service, that will help in achieving the same purpose?
True.
There are.
True.
It's more prudent to fix the road. It will benefit more Nigerians than spending that much.
Absolutely.
It's a waste. And when Nigerians complain, they are complaining about the cost of governance.
Thank you very much. And Robin Minds will continue after this break. I'd like to say a big thank you for coming on the show.